to have so much luck. And he's never not getting imprisoned. He didn't get impeached twice. He didn't get killed in a assassination attempt twice. What the fuck? He gets all these people to the Supreme Court and on and on and on. Why does he get all this fucking luck?
Careful, John, we're live.
Good evening. Welcome. It's the After Hours show. I'm Joe Umami in southern Turkey. I'm joined by Professor Ann Lee on the other side of the pond. She's a college professor and community member, a retired college professor and community member at the Daily Kos. She's a member of the National Council of Independent Scholars and is a contributor to the book, The Political Economy of Art, Making the Nation of Culture. Evening, Ann.
Hey there. Hey there.
Hey.
So you're going to do a prep for breakfast tonight?
Yeah, we're going to head out traveling shortly, so I don't have much food left. And I thought I'd make some simple breakfast treat, traditional Spanish tostada con tomate y aceite, which is basically toasted bread with chopped up tomato and olive oil.
Yum.
It's probably one of the simplest and freshest things to make. Very light, especially when it's this oppressive southern heat. Oh my Lord, nearly passing out every day.
Yeah, it's snowing over here.
Oh, I already got goosebumps. But let me just move from my control room here to the kitchen, and I'll better explain what's going on. And then later on in the show, we can get to yammering about all of these wonderful things happening in the world.
Indeed. While you're heading over to the control room, Twilight Zone is on tonight. The Penguin later on. So there is other stuff happening. Unclear what I think Star Trek this weekend, I think, and some other stuff. There's a movie, I think, again tomorrow night, among other things that are happening. I'm not quite sure what Lane has for us Sunday evening, but there's that. It's been a busy week, needless to say. Lots of controversy. Matt Gaetz only lasted less than a single Scaramucci unit. So that's about three quarters of a Scaramucci unit.
I missed the news cycle on that. What triggered his renunciation? Or
he quit because there was some leaking of the ethics committee report, and they even had a social network graph of how many people he had sex with, which was really interesting. I mean, it was all redacted, but you could see the social network and you're going, wow, he's spending a lot of money on women. That's a conclusion not made by any major publication, but they showed the network map, and you're going, well, that's pretty convoluted. And how come he's not doing any time for this, considering that a certain number of them were underage? So,
Oh, wow. Well, on to lighter things. I'm going to make chopped tomato salad, basically. A little bit different than in Spain. Normally, what they do is cut the bread in half and toast it, and then you rub the toasted bread with a little garlic, and then scrape the tomato on it. But I like to, instead of scraping the tomato, I like to grate the tomato first and then mix in some herbs, salt, pepper, seasoning basically. Normally you just get it with tomato and olive oil.
right.
So I'm gonna make it a little more fancy with this. This might look rotten, this basil here, but it's actually purple basil. Well, it's half rotten and it's purple basil. But it's all I've got left. So we're gonna use whatever's not rotten on here. And so basil, tomato, salt and pepper, and olive oil. And can just get going right away.
Would you call what you're making a kind of tapenade?
It can be used as one.
Oh, okay. Just asking.
This one, I think. I mean, it's going to take me longer than it needs to take you. So right now, all we have to do is toast the bread and rub the tomato on here. Also, I don't like to move this. Here we go. I don't like cutting it lengthwise because I find it's very upsetting to eat the bottom or the top of the loaf. So I tend to cut it at an angle like this so we can get more
surface,
easier sized pieces, and we get the uniform variation of bread.
Yes.
So I'm gonna pop those suckers into these in here.
Oh, they're toaster size. Cool.
Yeah.
You have a wide mouth toaster there.
Yeah. I haven't toasted for years.
Cool.
Luxury here. We got
It's a luxury.
gas stove. Toaster.
Gas stove, wide mouth toasters.
Like back in the States. Toaster. What do we need to do? Oh, one thing I also like to do here is get rid of the seeds. You don't have to if you don't want to be fancy. But there's a lot of water, depending on how ripe your tomatoes are. It could get too watery. So if you want to make it a little drier, you can just cut these out. About like so. Save those for something else. Oh, here's some more. Just use the rough side of the grater. and try to go from one edge until the skin starts to peel, and then you can press all the way around. And it just makes really easy. Pretty good, about like that. Pretty good. Last time. Even tomato.
Excellent.
Super easy. I think we got toast is ready. Let's go. Little salt, pepper, olive oil, yeah. Must be something here. We'll just have a little basil essence. We're nearly there. Just try to mix in the olive oil nicely.
Yum.
If you don't want to mix the olive oil, you can just drizzle it over after you put it on the bread. Oh, next, I often forget to do the garlic, and it's just like something like what's missing? There's something missing. What's cool about this is that the abrasiveness from the toasted bread acts as a grater. So
Yes.
if you just gently rub the toast, you'll get a little essence of garlic. Not too strong. You can just do however much you want. Voila. All done.
Excellent.
Breakfast
Yummy,
is
yummy.
served. Very light. All vegetarian. Tomato, grated tomato, salt, pepper, herb if you have any around, salt and pepper, and olive oil. Toasted bread and rub the garlic. Pretty straightforward. Highly recommend it.
Yum, yum, yum.
So I'm going to get packing. I might be back later on when we close out the show. I have maybe a big fat mango to slice
Ooh,
up.
yum. Yeah. Yummy, yummy, yummy. Well, I guess I better start yakking. Um, it's been a very tough week for a lot of different people.
Mm,
I'm gonna,
indeed.
as I've said, I call what I'm doing is the week in review, WEAK. So the week started in a kind of very strange place. So it's kind of reviewing the stuff I wrote over the past 7 days since the last Friday. Needless to say, I'll try and compress all the Ukraine stuff in the same place. So I'll start with the American stuff. Trump was going to try to get Larry, and I think this is just something pro forma, but apparently for at least a 5-hour period, Larry Kudlow was the number one Larry Kudlow, who does a Fox Business Channel show, notoriously predicted that there wasn't going to be a 2008 crash. And numerous times he's just wrong. He's just wrong. He's wrong most of the time, in fact. And it's just fascinating they just keep him on. He used to be, the in OMB and a variety of other things. But, some of us are actually technically
Maybe they should give the job. Well, maybe they should give the job to Jim Cramer.
Indeed. Well, Jim Cramer is slightly more qualified, but not much. So anyway, for 5 hours, Kudlow for 0.018 of a Scaramucci unit. Larry Kudlow was the head of the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors for the White House in the Trump administration. He pulled out of it 5 hours later. He turned it down, but I think it's all pro forma anyway. The issue is, of course, who Trump is going to appoint to stuff like Treasury, Secretary of Defense. There's dangerous stuff happening. Apparently, the current state of things is Patel is is he the deputy at DOJ or the deputy at FBI? Anyway, needless to say, cronyism is at work and of a really terrible type. And so all our fears of authoritarianism are going to come to a head, at least and if we recall the first Trump regime, all the crazy stuff got sort of thrown out there in the first 2 years. And this is going to be a very dangerous time. First 100 days are going to be difficult because he's going to distract people. He's going to deflect into other stupid stuff that will make people crazy, that make the libs crazy, and allow other crazier stuff to occur, which is, his MO. And it just is, it's just sad, but I suppose it gives Democrats something to do. Needless to say, I spent a little time last week only because it just seemed weird. And another of those things it's an example of what can distract from what he really was trying to do, and that is put all these unqualified people like Matt Gaetz into positions of power. Matt Gaetz withdrew his bid to as nominated to be the Attorney General of the United States. As we were commenting just as we came on here, apparently Matt Gaetz did not want to have all of his dirty laundry out there in the press, considering that he pays for sex. Let's put it that way. And particularly underage sex, which is even more interesting. And of course, the underage aspect of it, whether it's human trafficking or, all the other kind of possibilities that, it just shows sort of where he's at. But, there are several sub-stories to this. That is that depending on what deal making is going to go on, he could. There is some sense that he might try to get Rubio's Little Marco's Senate seat to get appointed by DeSantis to that, but I'm not sure what the politics of that are. The other issue is, of course, and the latest news was that he's not going to return to Congress because he got reelected to his House seat. So something else is going on, and as I've tried to joke, he should be ambassador to Thailand, but that's another thing. Frankly, he should be, I don't know what he should be. He could be the next governor because DeSantis is term limited, so he could be the next governor of Florida, et cetera, et cetera. But he clearly wasn't qualified to be attorney general, whereas Pam Bondi, who received for her reelection campaign $25,000 for Trump to ignore the larger suit that was being waged that ultimately came up to Trump having to pay damages at $25 million for Trump University. So she ostensibly took a bribe, and whether that but no one is determined that that is what it was. And of course, it's all the usual legal, the lawfare elements of it. It's still unethical if you really want to get down to it. But she's going to be the, sloppy seconds for the Senate to interview for Attorney General of the United States, which, will only make her the second female attorney general for the United States, and that should be interesting. Aside from the fact that she is clearly a right-wing person, a election denier, a stooge for Trump, that's kind of where we're going with this. So the other thing, of course, some of us are just simply upset about the outcome of the election, and that low information voters, mainly male and perhaps of color, but that it's not clear whether that really is. But we do know that somewhere around $200 million was spent to demonize trans policy by Kamala, which was actually mandated by the Trump federal government. So. But there was no advertising to counter it, showing that it was actually Trump's federal legislation that forced Kamala to do the gender confirmation surgeries in the California corrections system. And how many people did it affect? Only a couple of folks. And, there are only 0.6% of the population, the same percentage as Arab Americans in the total population of the United States. So we're talking about very small numbers. Needless to say, some people, it played, because they played that particular commercial attacking Kamala Harris on that decision that she made while Attorney General of California, it ratcheted up the ick factor for, I assume, a sports programs during which many of these ads were shown. So lots of negative campaigning still works, folks. That's kind of where it was. But on the other hand, there are a lot of, as Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s, they were quoting him from 2016, where he referred to Trump followers as belligerent idiots. I have nothing to counter that with. I think there's plenty of evidence for that. So anyway, so Cantaloupe Caligula and his clown car, has he sent out ideologues, morons, villains. All of these folks are he put up there, but to draw our attention away from the other things that are sort of creeping into place. And some of the not less controversial figures are going to be a problem relative to the White House. And so all that's kind of moving into place. some people have very short memories on this. Some people should remember all the, stuff that would have never, in a real democracy, would have at least, we would have at least asked questions about the role of the Bank of Cyprus for Wilbur Ross's when Wilbur Ross was being put up as Commerce Secretary, for example. And then, of course, there's all those creepos who are actually in the House of Representatives. What's it, Ryan Zinke and former Admiral, now Captain Ronnie Jackson, et cetera. So all of the clowns there are more of those clowns coming. And that's what we're going to look forward to in the second Trump administration. So it is, as I've suggested,
Sorry. Feel free to put up a share if you want. I took down my video just since nothing's happening on mine since I'm finished cooking.
I will.
If you wanted, or if you don't.
Well, let me
read them. Not mine.
No. I'm about ready. I'm ready to do it. In fact, I have the list of topics, and during this particular week, it's sort of interesting that Nancy Mace, who represents a very red district in South Carolina in the House, she's actually a somewhat out of control. She's a little unhinged. She's said some very terrible things, not just about LGBT folks and trans folks. She claims herself that she's very tolerant, but in fact, she's adopted this a series of gratuitous attacks, and in fact, a proposed House resolution to demand that all congressional facilities, like for the gyms, for the locker rooms, for toilets, public toilets, all of them have to. There's a requirement that the only people who can use those facilities. This is an accommodations issue that is clearly a civil rights violation, but that a demand that's enforceable by the Capitol Police, but that's not clear from the resolution, that people in a toilet, in a restroom, should be of their original biological designation. Now, I put it to you, and I'm sharing an image right now, by someone named Armand Domaleski, who posted an image, and that is exactly the problem here from a logical point of view, just from a reality-based point of view. Look, I generally don't care who's in the bathroom with me, but the law you're proposing says the person on the left should use the women's bathroom, and the person on the right, that is Sarah McBride, representative of the Congressional District 1 in Delaware, she's a new member of Congress, and the person on the right should use the men's bathroom. And, this is a typical thing that they've tried in red states to, this is just another attack on, bathroom control, whereas in more civilized parts of the world, restrooms are unisexual or water closets or however, the reality, of course, is that there are single occupancy, gender, neutral bathrooms available, thank God, or thank goddess, in the Capitol, so that's not such a big deal, but it is a standard for people transitioning at particular workplaces that they try to screw with bathroom privileges just to mess with people. And unless you think that's unimportant, that's been going on for 40, 50 years, actually. No one talks about it that much until people make a stink, and then there's lawsuits or there's other civil rights violations. It is this idea of trans folks having a less than human status, among other things. So it is, it's a rolling attack on LGBTQ rights, and that's happening. But for Nancy Mace to do it, it's kind of weird. That's all. That because she's a relatively tolerant person, but she now represents a red district, so all of her, this screwing around with these things is that she's trying to, raise up her Marjorie Taylor Greene coefficient. And I noted this past week that Lauren Boebert is back in Congress. She changed districts. I think she has Chip Roy's old district, and I'm not sure it's Chip Roy, whatever. She has the eastern quarter of Colorado as her new district, and she had an overwhelming win. It wasn't close at all. Now, I don't even want to go into why I think, I don't think the Democrats put enough money into, the Democrat lost by 10%, I think, so 10 points. So that's not, it's just problematic. But anyway, so so that's going on. I thank you for looking at the share here. I'm going to shift that back to, I think I can do it. Go back to where we were. Okay, here we are. Because it's better to look at my face than my list of things I'm going to yammer about. The point is that the autocratic path of creeping cronyism and kleptocracy, it's there. It's there's going to be attempts to screw with the Fed, the Federal Reserve. Trump mused about how he was going to get rid of Powell, and he couldn't. He can't. And Chairman Powell just said, no, he can't do anything. And so there is this attempt to mess with the Federal Reserve System, which is on the list of Project 2025 things to do. So anyway, I wrote a thing on Nancy Mace meeting the gender critical crowd because, in effect, her ruling would require, just from a safety point of view, because Marjorie Taylor Greene threatened physical altercations in the women's restroom if Sarah McBride used them, that is, the public ones. Every person in Congress has private bathrooms, so this is not as big a deal as one thinks. You wouldn't have to go to the other end of the building to the Capitol to use the facility. So it's not that problematic, but it does raise interesting questions whether, what's going to happen if Chaz Bono, for example, visits the Capitol at any moment, or whatever, or even Caitlyn Jenner, whatever. So these are these issues. In terms of total thought transparency, Marjorie Taylor Greene threatened to, during the time before Matt Gaetz decided to withdraw, she said, well, no, make everybody's, screw ethics. Let's just see the dirt on every member of Congress, which, of course, that's the logical fallacy of that argument is amusing, but one that she's willing to make because she's not very bright. But then again, Trump just likes screwing with people, so he put her on the DOGE committee, which is an advisory committee, a Department of what's it called, the Department of Government Efficiency, on which Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk are on, and they're going to make all kinds of pronouncements on how to make federal government more efficient. And I assume that appointing Marjorie Taylor Greene to that will be equally amusing in terms of what would count as efficiency measures. Now, note that these are advisory, so that all it's going to do is ratchet up the kind of PR kind of element, jawboning, as they say, so there's going to be a lot of that. It's going to be very noisy 4 years of silliness. Then I did a more theoretical thing about Tammy Baldwin, who is a lesbian, Lindsey Graham, who whatever, and a phallus walk out. It was just sort of the front end of a joke, right? That I don't have you can make up your own punchline. Tammy Baldwin, Lindsey Graham, and a phallus walk into Nancy Mace's congressional locker room. Because Nancy Mace, complained about Sarah McBride saying, well, I don't want her in my locker room. It feels like a kind of assault. And if she really does want to use a gym facility, she can go use Planet Fitness. So there's been a kind of a lot of noise this week about being unkind and discriminatory. And so that sort of stuff has happened. It still continues that that Trump's margin of victory is only about 1.4 or 1.6% on the plus side, whereas in the 2020 election, he was minus 4.4 in the popular vote and minus 2%, I think, in the 2016 election. So there's a very slim margin of victory in the popular vote that Trump is claiming to have a mandate and a landslide and blah, 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 blah. He only has 6 more electoral college votes than he got in 2016. So it's not really a mandate. It's a divided population, considering that he has this very slim 1% plus margin of votes. But in the swing states, which really where the election was won, it's only about a little above 250,000 votes. In 7 swing states, it's somewhere around 230 to 240 something vote margin over all 7 states. So it's very slim, and I won't repeat the demands for a recount or conspiracy theories about bullet ballots and blah, blah, blah. There's plenty of that, but that I think there's not the will or we got burned in 2000. An election that, as has been shown by a fairly rigorous analysis, shows or president in 2000. But that's just another story. Speaker Johnson, just to go back to bathrooms, Speaker Johnson, Mikey Moses, demanded the same things that Nancy Mace did. So he supported the position no one's voted on it yet, so it's not really in place, but he announced that he would support Mace's resolution demanding, birth status congruence for restroom use. But as I've tried to point out with my little image share there, it's going to get awkward. And I think it should get awkward simply because the argument is simply a canard. It's a false proposition. It's just a nuisance regulation that will be interesting if they try to legally try and do it. And it'll be interesting to see test cases. I'm sure there will be protests, and it will be another distraction from the other elements of things going on. So let's see. We talked about bribery, human trafficking, bathroom discrimination. It's been a busy week in Washington, D.C., and still important for most of us politicos because it's not going to get any better. It's going to get worse before it gets better. It's unfortunate, but that's kind of the thing it is. Let me use to continue the week in review. It is, as John Hayes, the week dim view. Warren has asked that AOC was going to be on the Government Efficiency Committee. I haven't heard that yet. AOC had some choice things to say about Nancy Mace, so that was interesting. And Harsh asking about what will happen to GAO and CBO. The reality is we already have 2 large organizations working on this problem. And this is only a sop, I would assume, to the ego of Elon. So whatever. And I think Vivek is there to cover the base in case Elon suddenly decides to bail. So this would be interesting. I agree with James. Matt Gaetz is now free to be the first bathroom police officer. It is about checking the status of people's genitals as though that were a prerequisite for actually using a toilet. And noting that, of course, both gender-divided toilets use generally the same facilities. The only piece of porcelain different is a urinal, but that's a whole nother story. So morons are at work, needless to say. That's kind of where we are. Let me use this last couple of minutes because Joe is probably going to chime back in. Ukraine continues. Big problem, of course, since Trump is coming in. A lot of running around. The Europeans are doing what they can. Money is still being transferred. Millions of dollars still are being transferred or been committed. There is new equipment. The Russians have taken 500,000 square kilometers, I think, of territory back from the original 113,000 square kilometers that were taken in the invasion on Kursk. They're still throwing Koreans in there. Apparently, a Korean general was wounded recently in an attack. That hasn't been confirmed yet, but that will be interesting to see that. Some of them have already been killed, the North Koreans who are fighting in Kursk. And so that's been happening. The big news, and let me start with that, I suppose, is that a multiply individually targeted reentry vehicle, a MERV missile. It is technically, although it's sort of on the low end of the definition of the category scheme, a ICBM, a intercontinental ballistic missile that is a multi-stage rocket with multiple warheads, was launched from Russia into Ukraine. Now, it did not have any nuclear warheads. It had six, I think, six individually targeted warheads that were generally landed in the same area, and only one that had a 2,000-pound I think a ton conventional explosive warhead. It dropped down, destroyed a building or two, but you could see the multiple warheads coming down. There's pictures of it. They launched it against the city of Dnipro, which is in the center of Ukraine. And so there's photos, there's bomb damage estimates, there's a lot of analysis about whether they were just using a leftover. I think they used an earlier prototype model, actually, that there wasn't a top of the line MERV, but it was an intercontinental ballistic missile, the kind that you defend the entire country or begin World War III with. And so that was a step forward for Putin, along with a lot of noisy rhetoric about waving sabers about nuclear weapons. One should not worry. I think all analysts say that, it's just noise, still the same noise that he brings up. Okay, he's brought it up multiple times and doesn't go anywhere, although you could say that this is a step further. It is a step further because it is a multi-stage, a weapon that could have had a nuclear weapon on it, I suppose. And I'm not sure what the 200 kilotons, I think, is the maximum warhead that can go on one of these things. So that would be a pretty significant disappearance for a city with a 200 kiloton nuclear device. But the fact of the matter is he didn't do it, and he won't do it for all the, I think, fairly rational reasons. So that's the big news. There are secondary news of all kinds, drones, and I think this last week, a Ukrainian drone hit a ammunition factory way far into Russia, past Kazan, pretty far in. I think it's the longest distance, slow moving. They have these little drones that, and they're being relatively successful. They're kind of like small airplanes, like a Cessna, and they have a bunch of those, and those go flying. And they have some that were developed by the Turks, also that do these long distance missions. So those are happening. The usual battles are occurring. Probably 1,500 or so Russian troops are killed or injured every day. It's up to 750,000 casualties on the Russian side. Not quite as high for the Ukrainians, which is good, but they don't have as many troops from which to pick. And so that's kind of an issue as well. And of course, there's the issue of attacks on both sides, and the electrical grid. I mentioned last week attacks on at least one dam, the hydroelectric dam, and those kinds of things. And lest you think that's unimportant, it's starting to get cold, and we've had the first snow not only here in the U.S. but in Ukraine. So that's happening. I think I've talked as much as I really wanted about the war in Ukraine, considering that it's still going to go on. And the Russians are prepared to go on further, but I think at some moment they've cranked more money into it. A significant amount is going in there, but there's all these sort of side issues that are strange and going on. Of supposedly a Chinese ship in the Baltic dropped its anchor and sliced a fiber optic submarine cable from Germany to Finland. And this is the second time something like that, some accident like this happened. And so there are other things are going on, needless to say. It's a cold season. We're seeing some changes. There will be probably some more advanced warfare sometime later on, but we're in the yucky season for trying to attack each other. But the same number of people are, getting killed every week. So whatever. Joe, are you ready to come back and talk before we talk about the schedule and Twilight Zone?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
The ICBM attack, was that the first time that has been done to a civilian population?
Yes. Yes, it's a milestone. No one's ever launched a MIRV onto a civilian population. I think that's it's just interesting. I mean, yeah.
It looked like multiple showers of light.
Yes, that's what it looks like.
Frightening.
The warheads are coming down at 20,000 mph. It's there's streaks of light coming down. But as they said, I think for some reason it had 6 warheads. One was live with, as I said, a ton of explosives, but the other 6 were dummies. I mean, one of the points of using multiple warheads is to confuse or optionalize whatever the air defense trying to intercept incoming. So we're getting a sense of how accurate or inaccurate. There was the thing I published last night. There was a little fight on what there's a mathematical formula for how you calculate the accuracy of a missile. Anyway, that caused a little kerfuffle in the comments about, well, how do you compute the math and blah 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 blah, and it's interesting.
There were 2 other milestones this week. Continued milestone of the Security Council failing to implement the ceasefire between Israel and Palestine. The U.S.
vetoed. Yes.
There was quite a decent rebuke from Palestinian ambassador. I think I might show that a little later.
Yes.
Also, the International Criminal Court of Justice issued arrest warrant.
For Bibi.
Yeah. So I guess he'll have trouble traveling to all of these anti-Semitic countries.
Indeed.
That, could be holding him to account.
I just want to see one country try and do it. I mean, they had this option to do it in where was it? Mongolia. Mongolia should have arrested, because they are also an ICC country, and they should have arrested Putin. I just want to see one country step up, and assuming they don't have a lot of connections or problems with Israel, and just sort of just arrest them at least once. I mean,
we can count on Hungary. I think we can count on Hungary. He's due to visit shortly.
Damn it. I just want, you just, I mean, what's the use of international law if no one's gonna, well, whatever. Anyway. So we're close to the end of our little escapade here. John, are you there? Can you tell us about, I think it has to do with toys tonight, the Twilight Zone at a little over half an hour from now.
Yes, well, it depends on your definition of toys. So, are model ships toys? If they are, you are correct. Yes. So we're going to be looking at the CEO and founder of a model ship building company and his penchant for loud noises.
All right.
Yes.
You mean, I'm not going to do a spoiler on this, but sounds very Elon Musk like.
He's not quite as successful as Elon, I don't think. Financially, I mean, is. But I think in terms of psychological stability, he might be in the same league.
Indeed. Well, that's everybody's got their, whatever. Later tonight, Penguin, the Penguin, a Penguin, the Penguin.
Just quickly review what I made again. Is tostada con tomate aceite, the Spanish breakfast treat. So just grated tomato, cut it in half. Take out the seeds if you like. Grate it. Toast your bread. When your bread's toasted, scrape it a little bit with garlic. It's salt, pepper, olive oil, herb if you have, or just tomato and olive oil. Super simple. Very straightforward. Highly recommend it. Very light breakfast.
Excellent. Come join us, the autonomouscollective.net. Join us. It'd be nice if somebody else would do some of this on Friday. We will eventually, do scheduling. Maybe I'll even get a musical bumper. We'll try to do better next week.